Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, August 15, 2024. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, through week one of the preseason, getting a little bit closer. We're in fantasy draft season very soon. How you feeling?
I think the word you're looking for is antsy. We're on the I'm gonna try precipice of the football season's kicking off. I know George is shocked at me pointing that one out.
Pretty sure
Uh,
it's two words you've never used in the history of this 200 and now 12 episode podcast, all in the first minute.
yeah, hey, we're off to a good start because we're that jacked up about the football season being back. I loved watching the Packers play in preseason, even though I was going back and forth between that and Steph Curry being the greatest of all time shooter. At the Olympics, shout out to the men's team winning the gold and the women's team bringing home that as the Olympics wrapped up. But yeah, football, couple more weeks of preseason, getting some fantasy drafts. Me and you got one this weekend. Super excited for all that happening, and just happy to be back talking football with you, bud.
Oh, thanks. Well, make sure you can talk football with us as well. You can send us a DM anywhere with your fantasy questions or just football questions. You can find us everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the Couch GMs. You also get even more content than you do from the show here. Cody, I'm antsy too. Why don't we just jump right in, sit back, relax, and chat? I mentioned Brandon AIYUK last week, and there's been so much back and forth going on. It seems like the picture's starting to clear, yet at the same time, it's not. Right now, we're looking at Brandon AIYUK in potentially either San Francisco this year or Pittsburgh, is what it seems to be leaning down to. It is rumored that Pittsburgh and San Francisco have an agreement on a trade, and Pittsburgh is in good terms with AIYUK to get a contract extension together with that trade. But San Francisco still has a contract offer out to Brandon AIYUK as a last-ditch effort to keep him in San Francisco. If you had to guess, where is he going to be playing week one?
Pittsburgh.
You're thinking Pittsburgh.
hmm I just think that at this point, like I understand, I know they upped their offer too, like they're making it more enticing. And I mean, I can't recall a time ever, seeing an NFL team have an offer in place, but keep wanting to pursue their guy. So that gives a little bit of hope for you Niners fans out there that he will return. But I think, we're kind of past the point of no return. They already have the deal. You know, in the corporate world, they talk about once someone starts looking for a job elsewhere, you pretty much lost them at your company, even if you offer them more money when it's time to when they put in their 2 weeks notice. Ayuk basically did that when he requested a trade. He's got another opportunity with the Steelers, and I just don't know if there's anything coming back from that. So I think Ayuk does end up in Pittsburgh to kick off this season.
I love how the media always tries to read into everything in situations like this. And I don't know if you saw this come up on X today, but I did. There was video of him basically standing, him being AIYUK, standing on the side to himself for most of the 49ers practice. As you know, he's a hold in. He hasn't been practicing, but he's been in the team facility up until the 49ers offense started doing red zone drills. And then afterwards, he was kind of getting in there, dapping up some of his players, talking to some of the big guys like Purdy and Kittle and Debo. And then he did get a handshake from 49ers general manager as well. So it seems like they're in good terms, which makes me think that maybe these like the contract negotiations are going well, and there's a chance he does stay in San Francisco. But I also think that could just be a professional, like, we respect you, you respect me kind of thing. If I get moved, I still get moved.
Yeah, it very well could be. Like I said, when is the last time you've seen an NFL team, you know, go this, have a deal in place on a disgruntled player and be like, nope, we're going to hold out. We're even going to up our offer. Like you can tell San Francisco wants them because realistically, if you're looking at it, this is San Francisco's last chance to win a Super Bowl in their current window. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy next year. George Kittle is, some might even say past his prime, starting on the downwards spin. Debo Samuel can be say the same thing with his injury history. Christian McCaffrey is approaching that dreaded 30-year-old running back. Trent Williams is a guy we're not even talking about who is also doing a hold in with the 49ers as well. So there's a lot of key pieces on that team. Dre Greenlaw, he's just come back from, the ACL he tore in the Super Bowl. Will he be back this season at all? A lot of moving parts. So I can see why San Francisco is trying to do everything they can to win this year because that window is closing quickly.
Yes, it is. And we'll keep you guys updated as we hear anything else about Brandon Ayuk. I'm hoping that we have a conclusion by our show next week. So keep an eye out on our
Hopefully
social
by
media.
Sunday, since we have our first redraft league on
You're
Sunday.
right.
So
That is the very beginning of draft season, but I really hope at least by the time the bulk of fantasy drafts come out, we have a conclusion on the Brandon Ayuk situation. Another key situation that turned out to be an injury, JJ McCarthy, rookie quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. I almost said Minneapolis. I mean, that's the city, but I was a little off there. Minnesota Vikings, he is out for the season after getting surgery on his knee. He had a meniscus tear that required repair. They were hoping to just trim it and then hope he'd be back in a few weeks or a few months, but that is not the case. We knew Sam Darnold was going to be starting off week one, and we were thinking JJ McCarthy steps in sometime during the season. I actually got a fan question from Andrew today. So shout out to Andrew for throwing in a question. Does McCarthy not stepping in at any point now this year concern you about either Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison?
well, Jordan Addison, he did leave practice today on a cart, which is never a great sign. It seems like, but it did sound like early reports are that he will be okay, something with his ankle. So maybe miss a couple days of practice, but should be back. Um, but no, I mean, I didn't really view either those guys with JJ McCarthy. I didn't think this was the same situation um as Mitchell Trubisky 4 weeks and he's out. Like I thought they were going to give Sam Darnold every opportunity. JJ might come in halfway through the season, depending on how well they're playing. And Justin Jefferson, he is almost quarterback proof. We saw that last year, even though he dealt with some injuries, whether it was Jaron Hall or Joshua Dobbs. Like he still put up points when he was in there with those guys. So no worry about Justin Jefferson. And I think we've already seen the effect of no Kirk Cousins. He's not the consensus number one wide receiver, but still a top five guy. And I think he's still in that consideration. And then Jordan Addison, his injury might play more of a factor than Sam Darnold. But the guy that might get a bump, and I've talked about him as when we did the fantasy drafts, is a guy like Aaron Jones. A quarterback safety blanket in the pass game too, but the number one guy, he's getting drafted a little bit later. I know there's been some reports out there that he's actually going to split with Tyson Chandler. We knew Aaron Jones was never going to be a 20 carry guy. He's just not that body type. But I think that can help, alleviate some of the stress for Sam Darnold.
I agree that when it comes to just specifically the wide receivers, Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof. I was not worried about him. And I don't know if I think the fantasy rankings kind of display it. Addison had a solid rookie year, but I'm not really like in love with his outlook for this season, at least. Like, I think I might be a little low in other guys. He's not somebody I'm like, I desperately have to get Jordan Addison. So with having Sam Darnold in there for presumably the entire season instead of that, switch back and forth, that doesn't really bother me. I don't really move the needle at all on Jordan Addison. I think Cody's probably trying to look up what his ADP is right now, which is really nice. So thank you.
Was that I was not
Oh,
doing
okay.
that, but I can. I will do that right now. And I also want to mention too, while I look up Addison, another guy that might be in some consideration of affecting the value is TJ Hawkinson. But for him, it's still how long is he going to be? There is some reports that he's not going to start the season on PUP. He's going to try to be back earlier rather than later. Do they rush him back if it, with Sam Darnold? Does Sam Darnold rely on the tight end more than a JJ McCarthy would? Those are all some different, questions that you would have to ask yourself.
But if you're even looking at that, is there much space to move the needle down on TJ Hawkinson? Seeing as though he's a solid player, he should at least get some of his. He's already got a discounted value because of the injury, because we don't know when he's going to be back. And the tight end position's so poor that if you're taking him around where he's going right now, I believe it's around tight end 6, tight end 7. That's where you're getting to the guys that are potentially not every week starters droppable anyway. So there's so little risk when it comes to TJ Hawkinson that I'm not worried about taking him regardless of the quarterback, wherever I take him.
Right. I wasn't saying I was worried about taking him. I was just saying I probably didn't do a great job because I was trying to multitask, which I probably failed miserably at. But like you mentioned, TJ Hawkins is currently tight end 13. I'm saying there's some reports out there that he might be back earlier. If you want to take a flyer a round or two earlier just to make sure you lock up him, I think that's an okay position. and hope that he gets back earlier rather than later. Because I mean, when healthy, he's definitely better than tight end 13. But to answer your question about Jordan Addison, he is currently viewed as wide receiver 40 with an ADP of 88. So depending if
Nothing.
you're at 10, or I should say, depending on if you're a 10 or 12 man league, depends where he's at. But he's right there with some of the rookies like Lad McConkey and Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Deontay Johnson. So those are the kind of area he's in. And I think the reason we're so skeptical about him is because we saw so little of him and Justin Jefferson together because of Jefferson's injury. He played great without Jefferson. He had 1 or 2 games with Jefferson as when he first came back. But seeing those two on a full-time basis is definitely something we'll have to keep an eye on. And some maybe just a little too risky for this season, especially in redraft.
Agreed. Yet you're still looking at not a whole lot of risk as he's going right before you would start taking your late round flyers. So you can look at it both ways. He's not going to more than likely not going to be a starter on your roster unless you draft some really interesting kind of way. But we'll have to see how that goes as we get closer to the season. Cody, why don't we continue our top 10 series and jump into running backs? What do you think?
Hum the music.
Burm, 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 burm. Nice. Okay,
Bro,
cool.
we forgot the most important news.
Oh, yeah?
Trace McSorley signed with the Commanders. Okay. That's more of an inside joke for everyone out there listening. For people that don't know, George is getting married at the end of September, so make sure you drop a congratulations in the comments or shoot us a DM. And we had a little guys' weekend this weekend to celebrate George. And of course, Trace McSorley came up quite a lot, which is why not random football players coming out up on a guy strip. So the fact that the song about him and all that we talked about this weekend. So the fact that today he signed made the group chat go a little wild. So kind of a shout out to the guys, shout out to George, and shout out to Trace.
Shout out to Trace McSorley. We're going into running backs now, getting out of quarterbacks. Like last week, we're going to do this fairly similarly. Obviously, Tyler not here with us. We do have his top 10 running back rankings. So I think, Cody, why don't we just throw out after a 1, 2, 3 our running backs as we go down the ranks, then we'll add in Tyler's afterwards. Do you want to jump right in number 1? Because I think it's going to be pretty consensus.
Oh, do we go 1 to 10? Or did we go 10 to 1 last time?
We went 1 to 10.
Oh, I thought we went 10 to 1.
No, we did not.
I'm pretty sure we did.
Nope.
Okay, we're going to go 1 to 10 today.
Okay, we can go 10 to 1.
Nope, we're going 1 to 10. You're switching
Maybe
it
we
up.
go 10 to 1. Okay, cool.
So when we're going 1.
Right.
All right, this is easy.
All right, cool. 1, 2, 3.
CMC.
Christian McCaffrey. Yep. Tyler also had CMC at number 1. Consensus number 1 overall pick.
I don't know about I don't think there's a true consensus number 1 overall pick. He's the only running back in that consideration.
Yes, definitely for that. We have some wide receivers that we have to look at that. I don't think there's much to say about CMC. Stayed healthy for the season last year. Has been better with health since he went to San Francisco, despite being leaned on very heavily. We got touchdown streaks. We got a lot to like about Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and taking the running back number 1 overall, like a lot of people are going to do this year with CMC, is always a risk because they're an injury-prone position, more likely than a wide receiver, it seems. But yeah, I know I mentioned we have a draft coming up this Sunday. It's the one with our wives and stuff like that. That's why we're drafting a little bit earlier because it's not as serious for us. But don't tell them that. But
Thanks,
I have
they're listening.
my wife doesn't listen to me. I have the number 2 pick, and I've basically realized I either get Christian McCaffrey or my top choice at wide receiver, and I think I really like that spot. It's not like, oh man, I missed out on Christian McCaffrey, but like if he's there at 2, I'm definitely taking him.
Definitely, because I think there's probably anywhere from a 2 to a 4 player first tier, depends on how you rank your wide receivers. And it's Christian McCaffrey in your top 1 to 3 wide receivers. So anywhere I think in that top 4 in this year's draft, you can't really go wrong. And I think we'll talk more about those wide receivers and how we tier them next week.
Yeah, and full point PPR leagues, you might see him drop to like 5 or maybe even some half point PPR.
I
It's
don't
really
even
gonna,
know about that because of how many catches he gets out of the backfield too.
yeah. I'm just saying, I've seen mock drafts or done mock drafts where Christian McCaffrey goes 5 with, some combination of Jefferson, Lamb, Hill, and Chase at top 4.
Mhm.
If he's going past 5, you need to change your league.
Or just beat them
Unless you're
every
playing
single year.
super flex, and then you gotta take quarterbacks in there, but
Oh,
we're
well,
talking single redraft leagues.
yes. Sounds good. All right, Cody, number 2. Are you ready?
Yep,
3, 2, 1. Brees
Breece
Hall.
Hall.
All right, we're in consensus on Brees Hall. Tyler is not. He goes Bijan Robinson. I don't think he's going to be too far behind for us, but what is your consideration on Brees at 2?
Yeah, Breece is my second favorite wide receiver in the draft.
That's cool because he's running back.
Right. Did I say wide receiver?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's because that dude can catch out of the backfield a lot too, and I think he'll be used that way. You know, Breece Hall is probably the next best option behind, or he is in my mind behind Christian McCaffrey. But honestly, if you told me Breece Hall finished with 1,000 like we saw Christian McCaffrey do a couple seasons ago, I would not be surprised. I'm not anticipating that because I don't know if they'll actually let him, get that many opportunities with a guy like Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball and checking out of so many run plays. But I think he's an elite weapon in the passing game. He has breakaway speed. You saw him come back from the ACL injury last year, got about a half a season. He'll be back full strength this year. I really like Breece Hall, and he is definitely like one of my targets. Like if you miss out on those big 4 wide receivers, that's where I would move into getting Breece Hall.
Did you even mention Rodgers coming back being a boost to the entire offense? I think that actually, normally we're looking at a running back to take pressure off the passing game. This could be a situation where last year there was a lot of pressure on Brees Hall, and the quarterback takes pressure off the running game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point there. And then Tyler has Bijan Robinson, which he can't hear to defend that one, but the rookie sensation from last year, he looked good. So that's who he has at number 2.
All right, Cody, going to number 3. Ready?
Yep,
3, 2, 1. Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson. Yep, that's why
So
I
I
didn't
said they
talk
weren't
too
going to
much.
fall far behind.
Yeah, that's why I didn't talk too much about Tyler's pick there because Bijan. This is probably especially in 10-man leagues. This is probably my line of first round running backs. I don't know if that's the same for you. But I think after Bijan, I probably would look to. I mean, if you're at the turn, maybe you just want to take one, but you're going to take him in the you get the first pick, the second round. Okay, but
Yeah.
those are the 3 locks I think in first round would be CMC, Breece, and Bijan. Which coincidentally, Tyler has JT, so he doesn't even have Breece in his top 3. But you see it. The only consideration for not putting Breece at number 2 is Tyler Algier. And I know it's no longer Arthur Smith, but I know they've made comments that Tyler Algier is still going to be part of this offense. Could he steal some of the goal line work? We'll have to wait and see. I think he'll get less and less used. Will kind of be more of how Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery were used in the second half of the season compared to the first half of the season. But yeah, Bijan Robinson, great option for fantasy this year, in my opinion. And I'll let you talk. I won't steal
No,
the
it's fine.
thunder.
No, there's 3 running backs here in our top 10s that have very similar story arcs. So there's Brees Hall, who was coming in there with Michael Carter coming off a great season. There was a little bit of a split at the beginning of the year. Brees Hall kind of transcended to the top of the depth chart fast. Bijan, who was splitting with Tyler Algier, there was games where Bijan just disappeared, and then there was like the weird flu game where they didn't say he was sick, but they should have and got in trouble. But anyway, um, so then Algier was kind of eating into Bijan's carries, but Bijan was a clear number 1 by the end of the season. And then there was Gibbs, who you mentioned with Montgomery, who was in a very deep split most of the year. And he was even in a little bit more of a split by the end. And I think now that you see that, Cody and I have Breece at 2 and then Bijan at 3, Gibbs hasn't been named yet. Like, I think we're kind of like seeing how fast they're growing, but all 3 of them have very similar potential to be number 1 backs long term in the NFL.
Definitely. And I was going to say might even argue the same thing you just mentioned with Breece about Kirk Cousins being a boost to the running back game coming off of what they had last year.
Cool. And then Tyler had Jonathan Taylor. I think we kind of glazed over that a little bit at number 3. We can move on to our number 4s, Cody. Ready in 3, 2, 1. Jonathan
Jahmyr
Taylor.
Gibbs.
Okay.
So
Cody, you got Gibbs.
I do. And I know he did get a little banged up. We're monitoring a hamstring injury, which is always scary. But hopefully with some rest, he'll be good and ready to go by the regular season. And you just saw his explosiveness, his productivity at the end of last season when he kind of overtook as RB1 for that team. That's supposed to be a high-powered offense. He's a pass catcher and a runner. Yes, David Montgomery is going to be that thorn in your side and steal some, touchdowns here and there. You think back to, prime Alvin Kamara. Every once in a while, Mark Ingram would steal that touchdown. That's what you're going to see down there. Dan Campbell was a part of that team. Heck, Ben Johnson might have been. I don't know where he came from before that. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the solid option, like what he's doing. I like the arc that you mentioned. And I think he's deserving of the next running back off the board.
It's so interesting having these very young backs who we haven't seen a whole lot of in the terms of, playing football this high up on the board. But these three just have so much potential, which is why they are so high. I have Jonathan Taylor here, and I'll try to help defend Tyler having him at 3 as well. And there's a lot of bad taste in your mouth for Jonathan Taylor because of how bad last year went with injuries and everything else. Like, he never really got out the gate. And then when he did, Zach Moss was so effective that it was like he's still going to get some carries. Jonathan Taylor never really got to be that bell cow 3-down number 1 back that we're used to seeing. So coming in there now, Anthony Richardson back under center, that should hopefully give him a boost. Seeing as he can, if he can stay healthy now, hopefully take over and have another one of those 200 to 300 carry seasons. We know the ceiling's there. That's why I still have Jonathan Taylor at my number 4. And I'm sure that's why Tyler put Jonathan Taylor at 3.
Yeah, I think those are some valid options that you have there for why JT should be a good guy, trying not to spoil anything. So you want to count us down?
If we didn't mention, Breece Hall is Tyler's number 4. So we all have the same top 4, just in different orders. I think that's a little low for Breece, but hey, teach their own there.
For sure. Do you want to count us down?
Yes. Number 5 in 3. Yes, I did forget. 2, 1. Jahmyr
Jonathan
Gibbs.
Taylor.
Okay.
So
and Tyler's also got Jahmyr Gibbs. So
we really have this top 5 the same, just switching it up, the order. But yeah, you guys mentioned it. I think Jonathan Taylor has a solid bounce back in him. Another where a healthy quarterback makes a difference. I know some people would say Anthony Richardson's rushing ability, especially around the goal line, could deter from Jonathan Taylor, but I think that gives him a separate option as well. You've seen he's coming into the season healthy, so I really like Jonathan Taylor, and I think he's a solid option at not pick 5, but running back 5.
RB5.
Yep, and his current ADP is 11. So he's right around that, end of round 1 if you're in a 10-man at the turn, or I guess both, maybe the beginning of round 2 if you're in 10-man, and around 1 and 12-man.
I'm with you there. That's around where I like him and my next guy on the list, Jahmyr Gibbs. They're both right there. Cody already said a lot about Gibbs, so I'm going to kind of just defer back. If you want to hear that again, just hit that back 30 seconds button a couple of times and listen to Cody again. I think he explained it pretty well. I have just a weird off the wall take. You first.
Nope. I was just going to say, actually, most podcasting apps, it's back 15 seconds. So maybe hit it twice.
Okay, there you go. I have a weird off the wall question because this made me think about something. So I was texting with friend of the show, Marcus. He's also in the Couch GMs World Cup. Little shout out to the Couch GMs World Cup here on today's episode. He is in the middle of transitioning a keeper league into a light dynasty. So we're allowed to basically keep one, what we call cornerstone player, to begin our dynasty. And I hadn't even thought of this, but he made it sound like he was shocked with my pick. So I had Christian McCaffrey on my roster. I kept him as my cornerstone player. Messaged him, said, "This is my guy, lock it in." And he's like, "I'm really surprised you didn't take Anthony Richardson." Is there any situation where you think that Anthony Richardson should be kept in a dynasty if you can keep one player and not CMC?
With the not CMC thing makes it interesting. But like we mentioned, Christian McCaffrey is, approaching that age for running backs. So it's like a little bit scary. There's high upside. Christian Christian McCaffrey just turned 28, so you have another year or two with him. I get the, thinking about it, and, if you have a quarterback, especially in dynasty where it's, more consistent quarterback is more important than and there's no waiver wire to stream. So you're looking for an upper echelon guy.
Mhm.
But with that said, with everyone only keeping one cornerstone to not knowing all the ins and outs of this league that you're in, I feel like Richardson is a guy that, you can get back when it's time to draft or something like that.
That was my thought exactly. So, I mean, I get the longevity thing's not there, but when it comes to like a guy who can help you win now, McCaffrey seemed like the guy that was, the best. It's also like a point per first down league. The point scoring is very high. So, to give you an example, Christian McCaffrey scored 520 points in that league last year. James Cook had a fantastic year and only scored 309.
Yeah, that's kind of scoring hurts my brain. Let's keep it to
Yep.
those more generic.
Cool. All right. Well, that's our number 5. Jumping out of the top 5. This is where things may start to get more interesting. We'll see. Number 6, Cody, you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Saquon Barkley.
Saquon.
All right.
So
Well,
it
we're
doesn't get
both
more
the same.
interesting.
It does a little bit as Tyler jumps up Derrick Henry to pick 6. I'll cough Homer. Kind of. Not really. He did move teams to Baltimore, which is a very interesting thing to look at. We'll talk about that when Cody and I have him come up. Saquon Barkley, my only worry about him is how many touchdowns is Jalen Hurts going to take away on the tush push?
Yeah, and I think I'm very interested. I mentioned this last week when we talked about quarterbacks and Jalen Hurts. I'm very interested to see how effective the tush push is without Jason Kelsey. I think he was an expert at leverage, and that's a key component about the tush push play in general. And that's why we've seen so many teams try it and not have the success the Eagles are. Don't get me wrong, Jalen Hurts is going to score a tush push touchdown this season, but you don't go out there and spend all that money for a running back, especially if your name is Howie Roseman, who doesn't pay running backs and finally did, to not get him involved and not start to protect Jalen Hurts. He's getting a little bit older. He is the franchise guy. Yes, his running ability and his, core power is, one of his big attributes, but don't think those front office people are like, hey, let's run this a little less. Let's, make sure we're saving him all season long kind of ordeal.
Agreed. And I think I mentioned this last week when we were talking about where Jalen Hurts falls in the quarterback rankings. I also expect Saquon Barkley to not go down inside the 5 as much as Eagles running backs have been over the last few years. Miles Sanders isn't exactly your tough-nosed guy inside the 5-yard line. DeAndre Swift isn't either. The amount of times DeAndre Swift got tackled inside the 3-yard line last year, I feel like I can't even count on 2 hands. Saquon Barkley's not going to have that as much.
I think you make a great point. And then without Tyler being here, I will try to talk for him and just based off of years of friendship. Derrick Henry is his favorite player, but that does not mean he is being a homer with this pick at all. Look, last year you could roll out Gus Edwards when he was healthy. When J.K. Dobbins was healthy, you wanted him. Heck, that run with Keaton Mitchell, you run at him. You want the Ravens running back because they run the ball. You're not worried about it typically with Lamar stealing touchdowns, and you're worried about it less with Lamar Jackson. So, although we differ, I understand why he might have put Derrick Henry this high.
Keaton Mitchell is someone interesting to keep an eye on because we don't really know his full potential, but man, did he look good last year. He'll be back at some point in the late first half or second half of the year. Obviously, you're not going to take that many carries away from Derrick Henry, but it could lower his workload a little bit. But the nice thing is having Derrick Henry, he's going to be the one to get the goal line work. You're not worried about losing touchdowns in that case, as you are like Saquon losing touchdowns to Hurts, for example.
For sure.
All right, number 7 in 3, 2, 1. Derrick Henry.
Kyle Williams.
I love Kyren Williams. I'll just say. Let's just note Tyler has Saquon Barkley here, so he didn't fall too much further. We already talked a little bit about Derrick Henry. I like Derrick Henry here, obviously, at 7. Tell me about my boy Kyren Williams.
Yeah, so Kyren Williams, if you look at his stats last year in terms of overall fantasy points, he's number 6, but he missed 4 games. So he actually, or 5 games actually. So, but if you do by points per game, he was just under at 20 at 19.9 in half point PPR. The number 2 fantasy running back per game. Getting him here, the Rams offense is known for doing some, great things with running backs all the way back to Todd Gurley. There used to be, did you want Darrell Henderson when he was the guy? Cam Akers for a little bit, you wanted him. So you always want the Rams guy because they just produce, and Kyron Williams looked great last year going into his third season. I really like this pick as definitely a sleeper guy. The only concern and why he's probably not higher is that 12 games he played last year. He does have a little bit of injury history. So that is one reason why he's a little bit lower on the list for me.
I agree with you there. And we already mentioned the other two. I think we can move quickly on to number 8 here in 3, 2, 1. Kyron
Devon A.
Williams. So I just
And
wanted to
Tyler,
move on there.
yep, and Tyler also has Chiron. That is a
Kyron Williams.
that's a graphic system in your production trucks, ladies and gentlemen. Not
If
the
you did not
fantasy running.
know, we're dropping the knowledge here on a Thursday.
Yep. There you go. That useless facts. Maybe you'll learn that on Jeopardy one day. But no, I'll just anything you want to add before I jump into Achan about Kyron since he's now here for you.
I feel like there's been such a carousel at running back in LA that like part of me looks at the rankings initially and you're like, is Kyron really that guy? But I know how much they were talking him up through the middle and end of last year. And then he still finished as a top 5 running back with 5 missed games. Like he was so phenomenal. I just hope he can stay on the field. The injury history is the only thing that worries me. So I'm right with Cody.
Cool. And then with Achan, there's a little bit of injury concerns with him as well. And then the other thing is opportunity because they still have Raheem Mostert. They drafted Jalen Wright. They, I think, still have
Jeff Wilson. He was
Jeff
playing in a
Wilson.
preseason game this week. So yes. But the fact that he was playing a preseason game 1 is probably not looking too good for him taking a lot of carries, but he's still there.
I'm actually curious. I'm pretty sure if I look up the Dolphins depth chart right now, they still have Savon Ahmed too.
I think they do.
And
So they are like 5 to 6 running backs deep.
And maybe even Myles Gaskin.
Oh, I remember Myles Gaskin. Man.
Okay. This does not have all them on that. So, but anyways, besides the point, the reason Achan is low is because of opportunities. But don't forget, Raheem Mostert was the number 2 running back in fantasy last year. So if you can get the Raven or the Dolphins guy, you want him because it's a high-powered offense. They're going to put up points. And I will say, despite him being at 8, if Achan is healthy all season long, he might have the best case to beat out Christian McCaffrey with his breakaway speed, with his home run ability, with his pass catching ability. That offense, he is a guy that is, could end the season as RB1. I know I have him at 8, and there's definitely some risk reward in there. For me, he's a guy I would love to pair with another more reliable running back. So Devon Achan is, currently ADP at 21. If you take a wide receiver early and then you come back around in 2, 3 and pick up one of the solid guys above and then pair him with Devon Achan, I really like that draft strategy.
So their running back depth chart, they still have Salvon Ahmed, Jeff Wilson, Jalen Wright, Devon Achan, Raheem Mostert, and then undrafted rookie Chris Brooks. The interesting thing, their first unofficial depth chart actually has Raheem Mostert as the starter.
Great.
Is that really a major worry to me? Not really, because those two split last year and all they did was both set the world on fire. But little bit of a spoiler, I only even have Achan in my top 10, and it's nothing to do with his explosiveness. It's just that I feel like there is a little bit of a cap because of Mostert, and it seems like Mostert's the goal line guy.
Yeah, I'm not worried at all. And just so everyone knows out there that unofficial or official depth charts, whatever you want to call them, that go up on your favorite team's websites are done by the PR department. They're not done by the head coaches.
Yeah, exactly. And I even if Achan starts as running back 2 on their depth chart, like I said, I'm not worried about it because both him and Mostert are both going to get plenty of carries. I'm just, if we're talking about rookie running backs in that arc, like we were with Gibbs and like we were with Brees, Achan didn't get as much of a workload as the other guys did by the end of the year last year. So he's lagging a little bit further behind. But when you talk about explosiveness, he might be even more explosive than the rest of them. So it's very high risk, high reward, like Cody said.
He also finished his RB4 in points per game as fantasy running back last year. One spot behind Raheem Mostert. which no one's talking about. But that just
Raheem
goes,
Mostert was an absolute animal.
yeah, that with that 18 touchdowns.
Yeah. Touchdown regression is another thing that we don't talk about much, but like Raheem Mostert's teed up for it.
For sure.
All right, where are we there? Number 8. We're on to number 9 in 3, 2, 1. Travis Etienne. So there's Derrick Henry finally coming off for Cody. That's a little lower than the rest of us. And is it anything to do with you worrying, or is it just you had other guys you like better?
Yeah, I tend to seem to be, at least with the group, to always be the high swing, high upside guy, or at least get a couple of those names up there. And I think the best of Derrick Henry is behind him. We're not going to get 2,000-yard Derrick Henry. I think he'll still be a very solid option. But guys like Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, their upside potential has me more excited about them than a Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I definitely get that when you're drafting upside. I think I kind of tend to lean a little bit more passive at the beginning of the draft and then more upside at the end than you do. I mean, you draft high upside the whole way through, but you know what I'm saying. The reason, like, I was very upset with how Derrick Henry was performing last year, and then you look back and it's like he was still a top 10 running back on one of the worst offenses in the league. Now he gets the boost of going to a new offense. Even if he stays level, he should still be a top 10 running back. So that's no worry about that there. I just wanted to see what your reasoning was for lower. Tyler and I both have Travis Etienne. And obviously the Jaguars worry me more than a lot of the teams that these running backs above us or above here are on. But they're still a very solid offense. And Travis Etienne has done nothing but produce when he's been on the field so far in his career. So he's definitely deserving of a top 10 spot.
No, I get that. And spoiler alert, if our list went past 10, he'd probably be 11. He's not on my top 10, despite finishing as RB3 last year. He averaged less than 4 yards a carry, but he did see 73 targets, which is great, especially in your half point and full point PPR leagues, which is why he's, a workhorse. He had double digit touchdowns. Like, he's a part of that offense, which is why he deserves the top 10 or top 11 spots. But I think it's well justified why he is down there.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think there's anything else to say there. No one to number 10, wrapping up the list in 3, 2, 1. Isaiah
DeAndre
Pacheco. Now, DeAndre Swift got me out of left field. So, first off, Tyler has Devon Achane here. I think that's very solid. I need to hear about DeAndre Swift at number 10 because if you look at a lot of people's rankings, he is like not even in the next tier.
No, I know he's currently ADP 64. And he's currently going as RB 22, it looks like. So definitely
So, number 10.
understand. And I put him in the top 10, but it's basically just preference. He still, to me, has the big game ability. We saw what he did at the early part of last year. He goes to a new offense where he's going to be used in the pass game. He's going to be a safety net for Caleb Williams. And yeah, maybe I'm a little bit higher on him than I should be. Last week I put Aaron Rodgers at 10, more just as a guy to, keep a name out if you're getting someone late. But, the next kind of guys that we're at, I won't spoil your pick, but the guys after him are like Rachaad White, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, James Conner, DeAndre Swift. Like, that's kind of where we're at. So, like, for me, it's more of these are kind of all in the same tier caliber of players. Next break, I think the one thing to take away from all this top 10 is like, and this is from a guy that, drafts wide receivers early predominantly. Like, this is a year that, like, the hero wide receiver strategy makes the most sense to me. Let me get on a top wide receiver early, get 2 of these guys in my top 10 in rounds 2 and 3, and then just have fun the rest of the draft. And I think if I don't do that, a guy like DeAndre Swift would be a nice pairing with some of these other guys. And I just wanted to give him a shout out at number 10.
I like it. I mean, it's a little bit too rich for my blood, but I like that you have your formula and you stick to it. And I mean, it seems to work for you, but that's a little bit rich for DeAndre Swift
Until
for
the
my
last
blood.
week, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. I have Isaiah Pacheco. I know he's not in a lot of people's top 10s either, but he's a little bit closer. I think that I'm thinking there's less and less Clyde Edwards-Helaire as we go. Like, I think that he's going to start getting more of the carries. He still has Jerick McKinnon to deal with on passing downs. So there's a little bit to look out for. But there's just something about me watching Isaiah Pacheco run like he's a small version of the Incredible Hulk every time he touches the ball that just makes me feel good. Um, and he's got that explosive ability because he's running at 120% every single run. He's going to get some work and he's on a high powered offense. I just like the upside.
No, I definitely get it. Are you worried at all about the Kadarius Toney running back snaps?
If Kadarius Toney is inactive for half the games this year, I wouldn't be shocked. And I think at the worst, you're going to see a situation where it's like, oh, Deebo Samuel plays running back sometimes, but CMC is really good. I don't think he's going to take enough to make Isaiah Pacheco really that bad.
Dude, I appreciate you answering that question seriously. Well, that was 100% sarcasm, but I
Good.
appreciate the bit for the listeners.
You're welcome. Kadarius Toney probably isn't going to make the opening day roster. And if he does, I feel like it's just we're still trying to get something out of this guy, but he's not really, doesn't really belong here right now.
You don't think Kadarius is going to make the opening day roster?
I mean, when you look at it, there's no really wide receivers that really like blow you away. Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown is probably your best option. Xavier Worthy, obviously a first round pick. Sky Moore, we haven't seen a lot of. Mecole Hardman's still there. Justin Watson, Justin Ross. But like all those guys, that's already 6 guys, 7 guys deep. And then I didn't even say Kadarius Toney yet. How many wide receivers are the Chiefs going to keep? Most teams keep 5, max 6. We're looking at 7 or 8 at this point. Like there's a chance he still makes the roster, but there's a lot of competition of some decent wide receivers in that room.
Okay. That's interesting. Interesting.
Okay. Any other honorable mentions? This is where you could have put DeAndre Swift that you want to talk about before we get out of running backs.
Yeah, sure. I'll mention some guys as honorable mentions. A guy that you're seeing at taken in the top 24, current drafted as RB11 is Josh Jacobs, the new guy for the Green Bay Packers. And I have been vocal in the past about not really liking Josh Jacobs, but I'm trying to be more approachable with that because now he's on my favorite team. But I think, the guy that we saw in Las Vegas that, got 15, 20, 25 carries a game isn't the guy you're going to see in Green Bay. I think they're going to be more of a committee. So I would not, I don't anticipate him leading the league in rushing like he did 2 seasons ago. So that's kind of where I'm at with him. And then I mentioned the DeAndre Swift, where he's going. And then I've talked about it numerous times. Aaron Jones, just what he does. It's not going to be a guy you want to start every week. I don't think you want to rely on that, but he will have his games where he goes off for a couple touchdowns. So he's a guy that I like as a backup running back, but considerable flex option.
I like it. I've got 2 guys that finished in the top 5 or top 10, in running back scoring last year that aren't on my top 10 this year. One's Joe Mixon, obviously change over to Houston, but I think there's still a lot of upside there. He should be their starter. Interested to see how that goes. I like him in that solid 11 to 15 window of running backs. And then another one is Rachaad White, finished as RB7 last year. I think Tampa Bay's offense should stay the same or get slightly better. He still has pretty much everyone around him that he had before. He showed some pass catching ability, which we were not expecting really out of him going into last year. Hopefully that continues. And he has a chance to break into a top 10 running back as well. And then one other guy, Ken Walker, started off the season on fire last year and then had a very disappointing second half with some games missed and stuff. But if he can get back to that production he had in the first 5 to 6 weeks last year, major value going somewhere around running back 15.
Yeah, I just want to caution everybody with the Rachaad White one. He finished in the top 10, but he also had tied for the most attempts, or maybe just under the second most attempts. Had only 3.6 yards per carry, only found the end zone 6 times. So his was a lot of opportunity based. They brought in a rookie running back. maybe the touchdowns will go up, maybe the yards per carry will go up, but just that's the hesitation for me with a Rachaad White is when it's more of you just are given so many opportunities to get these amount of points, not you're doing a lot with your opportunities, does always give me a pause for caution.
And yeah, when you do look at opportunities, that is crazy actually. Derrick Henry led the league with 280. He had 272, which was tied with Christian McCaffrey. And then when you also add in receptions, he was fourth in the league in running back receptions behind McCaffrey, Kamara, another person we didn't mention, Alvin Kamara, and Brees Hall.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara for me, he's in that tier of which honestly probably so is DeAndre Swift. Like for me, there's like a clear top 9, but which I led, and then Swift was the guy I'm taking a flyer on. But Kamara, Pollard, Pacheco, Cook, Connor, Walker, Harris, Gus
There's a
Edwards.
lot of upside you're talking about here. And I think I just want to hammer back home. You mentioned hero wide receiver strategy. And I would have no problem getting one of those top 4 wide receivers and then bundling 2 of these guys that we're like mentioning in a list right now as your 2 starting running backs.
Yeah, and most likely you can get one of those wide receivers and one of the top 9 guys we have as well, plus, a reliable, safe option like Alvin Kamara or maybe a little bit more high upside with a James Cook. So running backs is always an interesting one, and it's always one that you're going to have to pay attention to the waiver wire because it never fails. There's going to be a breakout guy week 1 or a devastating injury to a top running back. So George, with injuries common in the running back position, any of these top guys or just running backs in general that feel like there is a necessary handcuff for this year?
Man. So I'm really hoping this one doesn't happen because I like him a lot, but I don't hate taking a late round flyer on a Blake Corum behind Kyron Williams because we've mentioned how Kyron's missed some games and you always want to have that Rams running back because it seems like whoever is in there, you want to have that guy that's starting. So I don't hate stashing a Blake Corum this year and seeing how that goes. The other team that I was trying to look at a handcuff for, but I just don't like anyone behind him. I was looking at the Colts, who handcuffs Jonathan Taylor. Currently number 2 on their depth charts, either Tyler Goodson, don't really know a lot about him, or Trey Sermon. Hasn't been fantastic since he's come in the league. So I'm
Tyler
kind of
Goodson.
avoiding. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Tyler Goodson's a third-year undrafted free agent out of Iowa. There you go.
So nothing exciting there is what we're saying. And Trey Sermon, we had a lot of hype coming in, lost the starting job his rookie year, and never really got traction. So I would kind of not take anyone back there and wait and see. But I'm just looking at some of these guys who we know have had injury histories, and just seeing like, is there anybody that could play in? Obviously, you have the easy backups behind Brees Bijan that you can kind of look at in your late rounds, but I'm not really like devastating. Like I need this handcuff, like how it used to be with Alexander Madison behind Dalvin Cook. Not really that guy this year for me.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't think there is a best handcuff. I'm not, even in years past, we've been like, if you take Christian McCaffrey, you need to draft Elijah Mitchell later. Like, I don't think we're at that point. There's really not a handcuffed one for me. The Blake Corum one I do like, but I think he could also fit into your late round flyers as someone, a potential flyer as well. So really, I think this might be the first year in a long time that I don't have a true handcuff or like if that guy gets taken, I want to make sure I have his backup. That's probably just because we've seen more and more by committees. So even some of those guys will be drafted already and played on a regular basis.
I like it, but you also mentioned late round flyers. So I'm going to throw you on the spot before we get out of running backs. Couple of late round flyers that might not necessarily be handcuffs that you like looking at in the last few rounds.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a one that's not like a normally late round flyers are your young guys or your rookies. But when you're drafting, don't forget the name Nick Chubb. Had a pretty devastating injury, but he's working his way back. Most likely going to start the season on PUP, but will be around the 86th mark in terms of ADP. So a guy you could take late and either use as trade bait as he makes his way back or potentially get you a running back for the rest of the season. But then some late round flyers. Trey Benson is a big one for me. I talked about him before, the rookie running back out of Florida State that went to Arizona early in the second round. I believe it was the second round, maybe the third round. But I really like his, breakaway speed, his explosiveness. Um, Take your pick in the Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, which starting running back you want to try with in LA, because they're going to run the ball with um, whichever Harbaugh. I can never remember his name. And then the last one, I don't really know if it's a late round flyer, but more of a name just to consider. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be sexy. But Devin Singletary, he had a pretty good season with Houston last year. He's now the running back in New York. Their rookie running back got hurt this week in practice, most likely going to miss some time, potential ACL kind of territory. So again, this could be a Rashad White situation. He just might have the opportunity to put up points. You're not going to ever expect uh, a lot from him on, a weekly basis, but as a reliable late round flyer, spot start kind of guy, a name to look at.
I like it. I was also going to mention Singletary. Um, I like looking at the Washington backfield, which sounds horrible, but Brian Robinson's going to beat your beat up guy. Could be a goal line back, get some touchdowns. Austin Eckler could be on the field with Brian Robinson more than we think. I think they're going to try to get creative in the ways to use him as they have a young quarterback in there, try to find some easy throws for him. So I kind of like looking at those two in the later rounds and seeing if I can find a steal. Jonathan Brooks for Carolina, he might be somebody, depending on how his injury status goes through, you can stash on PUP and then bring off later. Obviously, Carolina, not an offense that's super exciting, but we're hoping that there is a step they take there, and he has the potential to be a solid running back for the future. And then I'm leaning Gus Edwards in that Gus Edwards versus J.K. Dobbins fight, just because I feel like the durability's there. I will never forget that J.K. Dobbins gets hurt on every 24 and a half of his touches. And there's going to be a run first offense there in LA just with that coaching staff. So I like that you mentioned Gus Edwards as well.
Yeah, one last name would be Chase Brown for the Cincinnati Bengals. Some people might like Zach Moss better. I think I'm leaning towards more of Chase Brown. But we've seen Joe Mixon be productive. He was RB5 last year. So there's some spots to fill in Cincinnati with that team. And he's going relatively late in draft. So it could be a great late round flyer.
Zach Moss currently about 79th overall. Chase Brown in the hundreds, 111. So chance to get some good value on a guy who's coming off the board second on that position group. But I like it.
For sure. Is it time?
I think it's time. Hit that bumper.
I almost hit the wrong one.
It's always such a cool song. Tyler's not here, but Cody's got the ball fact.
Yes, I do. I was waiting for Tyler to speak up, but he still didn't join. But that is 100% A-OK. And this oddball fact is a little bit, timely. Normally it's like some random sports trivia that you never needed to know. But with the news that JJ McCarthy is going to be out for the season with a knee injury, according to X, which is the most reliable source on the internet, hashtag not a sponsor, but JJ McCarthy is the first QB drafted in the first round in the common draft area, which means since 1967, to miss his entire rookie season due to injury. We've had first round quarterbacks sit, a la Jordan Love. We've had guys miss time, but it will be the first quarterback to miss the entire season due to injury.
Obviously, unfortunate situation, but it gives him a chance to, hopefully he's able to start working out like some way through the year. He's able to get into team drills a little bit and really learn how to be a pro and how to read a defense and learn a pro offense. I think it's going to help him in the long term. But if you're a Vikings fan who's hoping to get him out there and start to get him used to game speed right away, that's obviously a huge blow. And we hope to see him next year take a big step.
Yeah, and we've seen quarterbacks sit before, and it worked out great. So I think that will be good
Packers
for JJ.
fan would know for sure.
Oh, would I? Would I?
I don't know. Mr. Haven't drafted a first round quarterback since the 90s or 80s, actually, wasn't it?
We took Jordan Love in the first round. And Rodgers. What are you talking about?
Started a rookie quarterback. My bad.
Oh, started? I don't know.
Started a rookie quarterback since like the 80s or something.
Yeah, that's probably true. Since Brett Favre took over, he wasn't a rookie when he did take over, but
No, yeah,
that,
it goes back past him.
definitely. So yeah, definitely enjoy sitting our quarterbacks and drafting running backs late. And if you're me, but we talked a lot about running backs today. Anything else you want to add?
It is so much different seeing running backs this year compared to how most of us came up learning fantasy football. So hope you learned something from today. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, as always, make sure you're checking out the Couch GMs on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places at the Couch GMs. We're back every week, soon to be 2 weeks. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you all next week.